listen to fuel how to live healthy and thrive on this beautiful fall afternoon. So I appreciate you being here, because it's such a beautiful day. My name is Dr. Marc Rubenstein of Jersey Physical Therapy and Jersey LiveWell. And I'm here to provide you information about something that I am very passionate about, and that's living well. Some of you were here for the last lecture, and we spoke about how chronic diseases and pain can be prevented through positive lifestyle change. To me, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to reach a lot of people, and I really hope to spread this message. We all deserve the rights, no matter our age, culture, background, anything, to live healthy and thrive. So we need to start the conversation. What is true health? I am part of the Academy of Prevention and Health Promotion Therapies, and we believe that these are the 5 elements of health. They also happen to be modifiable risk factors for chronic disease. Last time some of you were here, we discussed MOVE, how we all need proper movement to live healthy, to prevent pain, and to prevent chronic disease. Today we will discuss fuel, how we need proper fuel to have energy for each day. We need proper fuel to live healthy, prevent chronic disease and pain. So what's the problem? And again, for some of you this will be a little repetition, but unfortunately it's important to set the stage. The US healthcare system is broken. We spend trillions of dollars each year in this healthcare system. About $10,000 per person per year. Yet we've never been more unhealthy. And we've never had the worst outcomes in the world. We lead the world in type 2 diabetes. We lead the world in overweight children. We lead the world in overweight adults. We lead the world in hospitalizations for respiratory diseases and diabetes. And we lead the world in joint replacements. 1 out of 3 individuals die of heart disease. And 1 out of 4, unfortunately, pass away from cancer. 70% of America is overweight or obese. And finally, by 2030, 50% of the population, 50% will either be diabetic, pre-diabetic, or diabetic. This is totally unacceptable. So the whole question is why? Why are we so unhealthy? Why are we where we are? A recent article I read stated that food is the #1 cause of poor health in America. Now we know that poor diet is not just an individual choice. It's about systems that make eating poorly the default choice in America. Dietary habits are the leading cause of death and disability in this country, accounting for 700,000 deaths per year. Food and the culture around food contributes to our eating habits and choices. And when we're looking at the why, we can't just look at the individual level. We need to look around. So if we look at our interpersonal level, what are our families, our friends, our social networks are extremely important in the choices we make. Going up to the organizational level, our workplace. Does the workplace lend itself to healthy choices? Next up is the community. Does the community support us? Maybe through walking trails or dietary farmers markets, whatever it may be, to make healthy choices. And finally, it's the public policy level. So as you can see, this is a multiple layered issue. It's not an easy solution. Food and the culture around food contributes to our eating habits and choices. That's the point here. So the Global Burden of Disease study, this was done in 2010, showed that the leading cause of death and disability was the American diet. And the worst aspect of our diet was not enough fruits. The third dietary risk factor was not enough nuts and seeds. And the fifth dietary risk factor was inadequate vegetable intake. So this pretty much tells the story. 63% of the American diet is processed food. Added fats and oils, sugars, and refined grains. 25% is animal food. Meat, dairy, eggs, fish, and seafood. Remember that cholesterol is only found in animal foods and the primary source of saturated fat. Only 12% is whole plant-based food. Vegetables, fruits, legumes, nuts and seeds, whole grains. And as we'll talk about later, fiber is only found in plant foods, and fiber is extremely important. So this is where we are. So what is the guide to healthy eating? The guide to healthy eating states we should eat less animal food and processed food, because that can lead to disease. And we need to eat more plant-based, whole foods to be healthy. So we used to have the food pyramid. The food pyramid was a little difficult to digest. A lot of feedback on that led to My Plate. This is currently what is promoted by the government, healthcare professionals, nutrition professionals, as to how to simplify healthy eating patterns. And there isn't just one, by the way, healthy eating patterns. We can go into a few of them, but let's talk about the plate. We want to have a variety of fruits and vegetables. Variety includes not only types, but also colors. And as we see later, color is extremely important. Grains should be a quarter of the plate, and half of those at least should be whole grains. Protein, again, a quarter of the plate should be protein. For dairy, it's recommended that we either use fat-free or low-fat dairy. And then finally, oils, healthy oils, like olive oil and canola oil, rather than butters and such. So the recommendations are a little more detailed. And again, what I hope to provide today are just some recommendations, some resources, so you guys can go out and look into this stuff further. MyPlate.gov is an excellent, ChooseMyPlate.gov is an excellent resource. Okay, SuperTracker.usda.gov is another excellent resource to plan what you're eating, making sure you're getting all the aspects of a proper diet. The recommendations say to limit saturated and trans fats to less than 10% of our daily calories. Limit our added sugars to less than 10% of our daily calories, and less than 2,300 milligrams of sodium per day. It's recommended we drink water instead of sugary drinks. That's a simple thing to get started with. And on top of that, coffee and teas are okay, but just think about what we're putting into those coffees and teas. So what I want you to do is think to yourself, when you had a meal, you had dinner last night, what did your plate look like? What percentage of these foods were on your plate? We can talk about that later. So a big problem that we have in this country is that our portions have changed. The portion sizes have changed. And that has contributed to basically the growing trend in obesity and chronic disease. So the point is, we really need to consider our portions. It's really important. So when we talk about recommendations, we talked about the guide to healthy eating. One of the recommendations, it's pretty universal, no matter what diet you're on, if you're on a Mediterranean diet, if you're on a vegetarian diet, or a standard diet, eat more plants. The average American, who's gonna guess? How many servings of fruits and vegetables a day? 1 to 2. That's what we average. And we know, we're going to go into it, that this is not good. Fruit and vegetable intake, again, is a modifiable risk factor for chronic disease. And low fruit and vegetable intake among the top 10 risk factors for mortality. So the question is, again, how much? And really it depends where you're at. If you're doing one a day, I'm not going to recommend some of these higher doses that we're talking about. And again, this is individualized. Remember, these are generalized recommendations. They're not specific to you. You do need to consult a healthcare professional. The USDA recommends 400 to 800 grams per day to prevent chronic disease, 5 to 9 servings. Fruits and vegetables will reduce cholesterol, reduce blood pressure, and boost the health of our blood vessels and immune system. However, a recent study showed the greatest benefit was from eating 10 portions of fruit and vegetables a day. That's approximately 8 million premature deaths that could be prevented just from fruits and vegetables. Extremely important stuff here. So for those of you who were not here last lecture, I told a little bit about my story. I did have a cancer scare at the end of last year, which thankfully is not there right now. And that prompted me to look more into prevention and wellness and achieve a certification in prevention and health promotion. And while in that coursework, I asked a colleague for some nutrition references, and he directed me to this book by Dr. Michael Greger, and it's called How Not to Die. So if you haven't heard of this book, the title scares you right away, right? How Not to Die. But let me tell you this, for me, this book was a game changer. And I'll even go as far as saying this book was a life changer. And I'll tell you why. Everybody's a different type of learner. For me, if I'm going to do something, I want to know the science behind it. And again, for me, when I read this book, it was structured in a way that really made sense to me. Okay, I was concerned about cancer. What did I do? I opened the chapter on cancer, and I read about the foods I need to eat to prevent or reverse cancer. There's a chapter on heart disease, on diabetes, and this is not an infomercial, by the way. But I'm telling you the importance of this book to me. The second half of the book goes into 10 food categories that Dr. Greger speaks of, whole plant-based foods that can prevent pain and chronic disease. To me, this made a lot of sense. Okay. So we're going to delve in a little bit into 6 of the categories. And this is not minimizing the other ones, but these are 6 that I chose to speak about. Again, this is all going to be on my handout, which I will email to all of you if you put your email address in the back. So let's talk about beans. Beans, they're good for your heart. I'm not going to say the second part of it. How many servings per day is recommended? 3. Before reading this book, I can tell you if I was lucky if I had 1, maybe a week. I was not a major bean eater. Beans are great because they're a protein, a plant-based protein, but they're also a vegetable. You're getting benefits. You're getting plant-based protein and fiber, low in saturated fat, and no cholesterol. A study by the U.S. Institute for Cancer Research suggested that we have beans with every meal. Now that, for you, might be a little, to me that sounds a little difficult, but what do I try to do? I try to eat beans as much as I can. Lentils, for example, blunt the sugar spike, and they're rich in probiotics. Black beans have been known to have the most phytonutrients. And finally, legumes are the most important survivor, this is a study that found this, in older adults. I'm going to say that one more time because I feel it's very powerful. Legumes may be the most important predictor of survival in older adults. So if you're not sure, if your body can eat beans, talk to your healthcare professional. Or if you just don't eat a lot of beans, the data's here. So next, we're going to get into berries. Who here likes to eat berries? recommended 1 serving per day. They protect against cancer and they boost our immune system. The American Cancer Study found that those who ate the most berries were significantly less likely to die from cardiovascular disease. So going into the plate, we talked about eating colorful and variety of fruits and vegetables. The colorful foods are healthier because they contain antioxidant pigments. So the more colorful, the better. The colors are the antioxidants. Berries have been found to have 10 times more antioxidants than other fruits and vegetables. And they also blunt the insulin spike. Cruciferous vegetable, it's a big word. Basically cauliflower, broccoli, arugula, cabbage, and kale. 1 serving is a ½ cup per day. And what's so great about these vegetables? They have what's called sulforaphane in them. Sulforaphane is a chemical that is an anti-cancer agent. It protects our brain, our eyes, helps with nasal allergies, type 2 diabetes, and even some studies that talk about autism. So try to get your broccoli. Nuts and seeds. Flax seed, I try to add this to my oatmeal on a daily basis. 1 serving is 1 tablespoon of ground flax seed. Helps with blood pressure, breast cancer, and prostate cancer. And other nuts and seeds, recommended 1 serving per day, which is a ¼ cup of nuts or 2 tablespoons of nut or seed butter. And we said this is the 3rd leading dietary risk factor for death and disability. Walnuts have been shown to be really healthy, have the highest antioxidant content, but again, this is not prescriptive. This is just presenting some information from Dr. Greger's book. And also, omega-3s, extremely important. Next, we'll talk about the benefits of turmeric and other spices. Who here has heard of turmeric? Okay. Mostly everybody. As we talked about with fruits and vegetables, the colors are the antioxidants. But it's the same here when we're talking about herbs and spices. The flavors are the antioxidants. We want to eat colorful, flavorful food because it's healthier. Now, in his book, he discusses that there's over 5,000 articles about curcumin, which is the active ingredient in turmeric. Helps with lung and brain disease, cancers, arthritis, and it's an anti-inflammatory. Based on this book, I do take turmeric, and talking to some of my patients, they've taught me how to pickle it with lime juice and add pepper, which I read in the book, helps with absorption. So again, if you have a question about turmeric, speak to your healthcare professional because it does have powerful properties, and they're learning more about it. This stuff is not set in stone. You need to look into it. And what I'll do is direct you to an NIH website, again, which I will email to all of you, which will tell you what is the government basically puts a summary out on all of these herbs and spices. A few other ones that I found interesting that you might too. Cilantro reduces inflammation from osteoarthritis. And ginger has been known to reduce headache and nausea. Peppermint has been known to have the most antioxidants. So again, try to have colorful, flavorful food. And finally, the last category I'll talk about before getting into some interesting research, whole grains, 3 servings per day, barley, brown rice, quinoa, oats, and whole wheat pasta. A Harvard study found that those who eat more whole grains live significantly longer lives. Whole grains reduce the risk of heart disease, diabetes, obesity, and stroke, and basically cool down inflammation, which we're going to get into very shortly. So when looking at a product, a whole grain product, look at the amount of carbohydrates, but also look at the amount of fiber. For example, if we see a bread and it has 20 grams of carbohydrates and it has 4 grams of fiber, that would be a 5-to-1 ratio. Dr. Greger thinks this is a good whole grain. Now, if we have 40 grams of carbs, we have 1 fiber, you're at a 40 ratio, 40 to 1 ratio. That's not great. So look at the types of foods we're eating, start to read the labels, even though they can be confusing. This is a concept that really made sense to me, and hopefully it makes sense to you. There's a lot of recent articles about how diet induces a pro-inflammatory state. Basically, the typical American diet we talked about doesn't have enough fruits and vegetables, which give us antioxidants and phytochemicals that help with a host of chronic diseases we spoke about. And also, the American diet has excessive meat, refined grains, and dessert foods. Together, this creates adverse biochemical effects that can lead to a pro-inflammatory state. So again, what we want is to eat foods that reduce inflammation. Fruits and vegetables, greens, legumes, reducing inflammation, and reduce our intake of things that may increase inflammation, such as processed foods and meats. 6 out of 10 chronic diseases, just heart disease, diabetes, and stroke, to name a few, have been called pro-inflammatory diseases. And degenerative, basically, inflammation is not just seen in a post-operative state, in a healing process. Inflammation is seen with degenerative diseases, heart disease, diabetes, stroke. So again, think about what types of foods we're eating, because this can have an effect. The next is the relationship between our diet and pain, and more of this is coming out. To me, this is fascinating. And they're just starting to bring out these articles and do this research. So by no means is it conclusive, but it tells us there's a lot of connections in health between those 5 elements we spoke about earlier. Uncontrolled diabetes may contribute to the development of chronic back pain. So what should we do as a healthcare professional? That tells me, not only do I want to help a patient with their back pain, but I also want to advise them on how to live a healthy lifestyle. See the relationship here. And also, a high fiber intake has been linked to a lower risk of painful knee osteoarthritis. Like we said earlier, fiber is extremely important. Again, just starting to find this stuff out, but it's very interesting. It makes us think, what types of foods are we eating? The typical American diet has about 10 grams of fiber. 20 to 35 are recommended. Makes sense given that we don't eat enough fruits and vegetables, right? Soluble fiber, oatmeal, nuts, beans, apples, and blueberries have been known to help with heart and diabetes protection and help with weight loss and a healthy bowel. And insoluble fiber, which is found in seeds and the skins of fruit, whole wheat bread and brown rice, have been shown to help with weight loss and digestive health. A recent study on successful aging found that dietary fiber intake was the most important factor in successful aging, which essentially was the absence of chronic disease, including cognitive health and other factors. So again, stresses the importance of fiber intake. So, I hope I didn't go too fast. I want you to think about what was one take-home that you learned today. And number 2, I'm going to issue a challenge. So if you're up for it, please take the challenge. Make one dietary goal of something maybe you learned today over the next week. Choose an accountability partner. We know that social support is extremely important in making change. That is the last element I'm going to speak about as we get through these lectures. So choose that partner and really start behavior change. It's not a short-term diet. We're talking about a long-term lifestyle change. That's what this is all about. Thank you all for coming today. I wanted to invite you to either come or bring a friend to the next lecture, which is basically recovery. Recovery is going to mainly focus on sleep. How do we achieve better sleep, better health, better recovery? We'll go into the concept of endure. After that, endure is about stress and mindfulness. And finally, the importance of social connectedness, which we spoke about. So please join me again. Thanks for coming out on a beautiful day. I'm happy.